Welcome to Art by Rick. I'm Rick. Today I'm going to do another simple painting. This is something that I've never tried before. I've seen a lot of videos and different techniques of doing this kind of abstract painting, but I've never tried it. So you're going to join me on this particular episode, and you're going to be just as surprised or maybe just as disappointed as I will be as we try to do this particular type of painting. It's called a press and twist. The press and twist technique is the type of technique where you take a canvas and you're pressing it into the paint and giving it a slight turn. Now there's a number of ways of doing this particular type of painting. I've seen artists take two canvases, put paint on the two canvases and then sandwich them together and then pull them apart to see what kind of designs they get on the inside of the canvas. I've seen techniques where they just take the canvas and lay it on a flat table and press different objects into, kind of like the balloon smash we did in a couple of episodes ago, into the paint, seeing what kind of designs they can get. This one's a little bit different. In this particular case, I'm going to do a painting where I need a few tools. Of course, I've got to have my paper towel ready. I've got to have my cups so I can mix my colored paints, and a couple of unique tools. I'm going to be using tin foil. Now, how am I going to use this tin foil? Well, I'm going to show you. So let's go over to the preparation table, and I'll show you how I set up to do this painting. Okay, here we are over at my preparation table, and what I've done is I've just torn off a piece of regular tin foil. Now, one of the secrets with this particular technique is we want to use the tin foil to help make the impressions on the canvas. So basically what I do is I take the tin foil and I just kind of crumple it up lightly, just to kind of give it some ridges, and then I'll unfold it, being careful not to tear it. And I'll lay it down on the table. Now, I want to take my canvas and make sure that I have enough tin foil to be able to help spread the paints over the canvas. So I prepared a 12 by 12 canvas. This is just plain old canvas stretched on a wood back or wood frame. I've already sealed this particular canvas. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that the canvas is going to fit on top of the piece of tin foil that I'm going to do my press and my twist on. So as you see, I've just basically put the canvas onto the particular tin foil. Now, before I do anything here, before I apply my paints, I'm going to be doing a twisting technique, so I don't want the tin foil to be moving with the canvas. I want it to stay still. So how are we going to do that? Well, the easiest way to do that is to basically just take some simple masking tape and tape the tin foil onto the table. So I'm going to go about and do that. Okay, so what I've done now is I've taken my tin foil and I crumpled my tin foil up, and as I said, I've taped it down. I've basically put the tape around the tin foil, so it's roughly about the size of the canvas. I've left a little bit of space all the way around. I've seen some artists put their canvas onto the tin foil or onto the table and use white paint to kind of mark the corners, because you want to make sure that you get paint from corner to corner. So I go a little bit bigger to make sure that I'm covering it pretty well with the paint. Now, the canvas I'll put aside for a while. I've mixed my paints. I've just selected a bunch of paints that I'm going to use. One thing about these paints, these are acrylic paints, and rather than doing the paint straight on the canvas itself, I've chosen to mix it in the cups. And what I'm using is a 1-to-1 mix. In other words, I've done a little bit of the colored paint and about the same amount of the acrylic pouring medium, and then stirred it together. This is just to give my paint a little bit of liquidity, but I don't want to make it where it's watery. I want it to have still a little bit of thickness, because my plans are to be able to press the canvas into the paint and give it a twist. Now, very similar to other kind of pressing techniques, I don't want to overdo it too much. And I've picked a bunch of bright colors here because I'm hoping it's going to show up on the screen so that you'll be able to see exactly what the designs are. And one of the things that the tinfoil does allow to do with the canvas is it gives the paint a little more depth, a little bit more textured type of a feeling to it, rather than just being flat corners. If you watched a couple of episodes when we did the balloon smash technique, we poured colors onto a canvas and took an inflated balloon and basically just pressed onto the paint so that the balloon helped spread the paint and it made kind of a flat impression, giving it a little bit of texture but not a lot. This has a lot more texture to it. As with all acrylic paints, this will take a while to dry, but let's see what we can get here. And again, I haven't done this before, so I really don't know what it's going to come out to be. So I'm going to kind of spread the colors around a little bit. Basically, I kind of just do some drippings onto the thing, and I'm a big guy as far as dots are concerned. I like to do dots. So in this case here, I'm just pouring my paint onto my tin foil, just kind of going, and my object here is to try and cover all of the tin foil. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a border to kind of work with here. And again, I'm just pouring my paint onto my canvas so you can see what I'm doing here as far as colors of the paint are concerned. I try to do some contrasting colors, so I'm going to do a little bit of pink on here. This is a great way to use up leftover paints. If you're an artist or even someone who just does it as a hobby, you know how you always end up with oddball paints left over, a little bit in this tube, a little bit in that tube, a half a thing of this, a half a thing of that. And you want to start a new project and you don't know if you're going to have enough of that color. So you want to use up the paints. And this is a great way to be able to figure out how to just basically use up the paints or those extra paints that you have. It's just kind of pouring them on here and seeing what you're going to get. So again, I'm just pouring some multicolor paints on here. Now the gaps that you're going to see as far as the tinfoil are concerned, the white of the canvas will probably show through as these paints begin to mix. But again, you're going to be able to see what this is going to do. Now I'm just going to basically drip some of the extra paint that's in the cups here onto the canvas, making sure I've got enough coverage. Again, I'm just covering the canvas as completely as I can with paint. And as always, I use a little bit of white as kind of my medium going in there. Again, just trying to fill in some of the holes and some of the gaps with some of the white. And very sparingly, I'm going to use a little bit of black. I'm just going to kind of dot some black on here, just a little bit here and there. Not too much. Black tends to overtake the painting, so I'm not going to do too much, just a little bit, just to kind of have some black in there. Okay, there we go. So in this case here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different colors that I've put on the canvas that I've decided to use. I've spread the paint onto the tin foil, which is taped down onto the table. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the pressing technique. So again, my 12 by 12 canvas, I'm going to take this 12 by 12 canvas and I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to put this onto the paint. Now, I want to make sure I have good coverage, so I'm going to kind of center this a little bit. And I'm going to kind of wiggle it in. And this becomes the pressing technique. And basically, you're just kind of pressing the canvas into the paint. Sometimes you just can trace your fingers over it, kind of mushing that paint onto the canvas, making sure that you're getting good coverage. I can feel it underneath the canvas as I'm running my fingers around. I can feel the blobs of paint. I can feel the tin foil, the different ridges in the tin foil itself. But again, I'm just kind of covering it, making sure that I got the canvas pretty well covered. All right, so now I've pressed my paints into the canvas. I have the canvas set. Now I'm going to go to the next step. The next step is going to be the twist. Now, when doing the twist, you can't press down and twist. You're just going to smear your paints together, and it's going to be that much more difficult when it comes time to separate it from the tin foil. So it's going to be a light press. I'm actually going to pick up just a little bit on it so that I have room to give it a little bit of a turn. Now the question that comes up is, well, how much do I turn the canvas? Do I turn it all the way around? Do I go halfway? Do I go quarter way? I like to just go just a quarter turn. You can go quarter turn to the right. You can go quarter turn to the left. It depends on what suits your mood as far as the painting is concerned. But once you've got this on the canvas and you're getting ready to do your twist, you make sure that you got your paintings covering as much as you possibly can, and then you're going to get ready. So I'll just let this sit for a moment. I'm just going to step back, kind of let it sit. We'll see how this is going to look. Okay. So, I don't know, the anticipation is killing me here, folks. I've never done this before. I have no idea what this is going to look like. I'm hoping that it's going to come out and look like something pretty. And it's not going to be just a big blob mess of paint. But again, we're going to see what happens here. So just in a quick review before I twist this, what I've done is I've laid tinfoil onto my table. I've taped the tinfoil in place after I've crumpled up the tinfoil. This is to give me some ridges and some different aspects to the surface that I'm pressing into. I've picked several colored paints that I've poured on the tinfoil, trying to get as much coverage as I can for the size of the canvas that I'm going to use. And then I put the canvas onto the tinfoil and I pressed it, smoothing it into the paint, making sure that the paint is mushed into the canvas and it's giving me good coverage. Now the next thing is I'm going to do my twist. So I'm going to take this canvas and I'm just going to pull up on it just a little bit, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a turn. So here we go. We're turning this. We're going to turn it. So like I said, I like to do at least a quarter turn on the canvas. So there you go. I've given it a quarter turn. Now the next step is going to be to pick it up to see what we get. So are we ready? Okay. Let's see what happens here. We're going to gently pick this up, being careful that we don't peel up the tin foil. And then we're going to take a look and see what we got. And there is our press and twist. Now you ask me, well, what are you going to do with these corners that didn't fill in? Well, what I usually do is I just stick my fingers in and I just kind of fill in the corners with some color with my fingers. So I'm basically just filling in the whites that are in here so that I get a little bit of a color fill, making sure that all the different areas of the canvas are covered. I'll use a little bit more over here just to kind of cover the corners, and a little bit up here. And then I'll take my fingers and I'll run them along the side of the canvas to kind of give the canvas a seal all the way around. So again, I'm using the colors that are in the canvas to basically seal it. So again, I'm sealing this canvas all the way around. Again, I'm using some of the paints that are on the table here to just give it a good seal on the canvas. And there you go. Bring it up a little bit closer. That's my press and twist. So this was just made by taking the paints, spreading them out onto the tin foil, pressing into the tin foil and giving it a twist to see what I get. And again, with an abstract painting, you could turn this any which way that you want, just to make sure that you get the coverage you want or the appeal of what you want. Now, how am I going to do this to showcase it? Usually what I do with my tiles is I'll paint a larger canvas an opposite or neutral color. A lot of times I'll use black, or I may just use white, and I'll glue this canvas onto it so it really pops out. So I'll show you what that looks like when it's completely dry and when it's done. But that's the simple technique. Now, where do you go from here? Well, first we're going to put this aside. And I'm going to use a little bit of tin foil to clean my hands. Now, the nice thing about this, as you can see, is it's quite a mess. If you have other canvases, you could press other canvases in here and do other things with this particular amount of paint, because there is a lot of paint that's left over here on the canvas. So, I mean, you can play around with this and do a number of different things with it. What I prefer to do is I just make it easy cleanup. I'll just take my cups and I'll pop them together like this so that I have all my cups together. I'll put my cups down like that in the middle of the thing, and then what I just do is I just take my table and I just fold up my cloth. So again, I'm making it as clean as I possibly can so that I don't have a lot of paints dripping all over my table. All right, so let's go back over to the work table and we'll talk about what we just did. Okay, so we're back over at the work table. What we did today is we did what was called a press and a twist technique. Now, as you saw, I basically used my preparation table as my countertop, and I tried to get the camera up high enough so that you could see what I was doing. You're going to need paper towel. You're going to need some stir sticks. You're going to need a bunch of different colored paints, whatever colors you want, leftover paints, bright colors, whatever you feel you want to use. You're going to need some tape so you can tape your tin foil down. You want to remember you're going to crumple up that tin foil first before you put it down on the table, and then you're going to tape it all the way around to about a 1/2 inch around the size of the canvas you plan to press in. You want to make sure that when you mix your paints, you don't mix them too liquidy, otherwise they're not going to look good. You want to do 1/2 and 1/2. I've done the paint with 1/2 of the acrylic pour or the medium in order to thin the paint out just enough so it was spread. When you take that canvas and you place it down on the paint, you want to make sure you get good coverage. Now, when I did this one, it's the first time I've done it, so I didn't get all the way to the corners because I didn't press it in good enough, so that when I went to twist, you saw earlier that I had gaps in the corners of the canvas. The way to prevent that is to make sure that your paint is covering the area you're going to press into. So really spread that paint out. It's good to go beyond the lines when it comes to pouring the paint, because you want to make sure you get that good coverage. So now you take your canvas, you turn it around, you press it into the paint, you let it sit for a few minutes, and then you're going to pick it up slightly and you're going to give it a turn. I decided to do a 1/4 turn rather than a full turn because I just wanted some gentle mixing of the paint. And then those areas that didn't cover, what I did was I just dipped my fingers into some of the paint that was on the table and used that to fill in the white spots that weren't covered with the paint. And basically what I ended up with is I ended up with my 12 by 12 tile. In this particular case, a nice colorful tile completely covered with the paint that I pressed in and that I did a twist. Very, very simple, easy painting to do. No two are going to come out exactly the same. It is like with a lot of my paintings when I'm doing acrylic pours, kind of messy. So you do want to make sure that you've set up an area that you're not going to be too worried about getting splattered paint all over, or that's easy to clean. You saw my little secret. I basically throw a plastic cloth over the top of the preparation table so that when I paint on it, if I spill any paint anywhere, it's real easy for me to just fold up that plastic cloth with any paper towel or paper cups or anything that I have left over, and easily just bunch it up and be able to put it right into the trash so that I can do a nice, easy cleanup. One of the other things that you've got to be aware of course, is I like to use my hands, so I get paint all over my hands. You know, pick your paints where they're washable with waters. I know some artists that use some kinds of paints that are much more permanent and staining, so they will wear gloves when they're doing their artistic works, because if they get it on their skin, it's very tough. It's like a permanent marker. It's very tough to get that paint off. The acrylics that I use are washable. I just get some dish soap and some mildly hot water and wash my hands, and everything cleans up all nice and clean. So, easy cleanup. Preparation, as with anything, is key. So you want to make sure that you've got everything that you need. All your paints mixed, your preparation of your surfaces, your tin foil's in place, everything's taped. So when you can do this, as you saw, it doesn't take long to make the painting. It's just a few seconds to make the painting. However, if you're not prepared, you could run into a situation where you're pressing the paint into the twist or getting ready to twist it, and you've let it sit too long, and now it dries, and when you go to pick it up, you're going to end up picking up the tin foil and the tablecloth and everything with it, and you're going to have a big mess. So you want to be really simple on how you're doing it. Again, a press and twist painting on a 12 by 12 canvas. I'll show you that painting again. Multicolors. There are 8 colors in this particular thing, and I will take this, and once it dries, I will take this particular panel and I will glue it onto a larger panel, which will give it kind of a frame around it and really allow it to be shown. Through the magic of television, as I was saying, to finish the panel, I painted a regular white canvas. I took a white canvas, this size here, this is a 16 by 20 canvas that's been sealed, and I painted it black. And the reason why I did that is because I want my press and twist painting to have a nice background and to look framed. So I painted the canvas black. I took my 12 by 12 tile, was very careful in the placement of how I was putting it on that 16 by 20 canvas, making sure I measured all sides and got it nice and even and centered. And then I glued it using just plain store-bought glue, white glue, and glued it onto the black panel. And basically what I ended up with is I ended up with this. So as you can see, the painting now is framed off with a black panel all around it. This gives it a perfect surface for me to be able to hang it and display it. I chose which direction I wanted the painting to go into. And as I said, I always put my signature in the bottom corner of the painting. This way kind of gives me an idea of which way to hang it. In your own paintings, when you're doing abstract though, especially when you're doing this kind of painting or some of the others I've showed on the show, you can hang it any which way you want. Whatever pleases your eye. Just make sure that if you're going to sign the painting, your signature is off in the corner somewhere where it doesn't look like the painting's hanging upside down. One artist told me that he likes to sign his paintings on the back. This way, when he displays them, the signature is not kind of giving away, it should be in this position. So it gives him the opportunity to be able to hang it whichever way he feels like. And sometimes he goes around and changes his paintings up, hangs them different directions so they have a different way that they look. But again, a press and a twist. My name is Rick, and this has been Art by Rick, and I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
When we think of an iconic New England town green, we think of the place where people got together and maybe heard some music, heard someone give a speech, maybe get an award. Times have changed, but the digital town green still brings all those stories, all those voices back to a central location. Nutmeg TV has been providing community television for over 30 years. We provide great facilities and training and equipment to allow anyone to come in and produce TV programming for the community.
Whether you're a college student looking to get into this industry or a senior citizen looking to learn a new skill set, we've made our equipment accessible to anybody.
Nutmeg TV is a family, and we embrace diversity, and we work with folks from all walks of life. And it's our job to make these studios available for anyone to use. We educate folks in how to do TV production, podcasting, etc., and so they can go on to other careers in the TV business. Nutmeg TV is really blessed to have a great group of folks who work here. We have a culture at Nutmeg TV that is set from the moment you walk in the door for positivity all day long. Each and every day, we are affecting the community in which we live. We needed some studio upgrades, and we were able to get a grant with the state of Connecticut, but we needed that extra bit of cash in order to get over the hump. As you know, technology is very costly, and we needed to do that. And Ion Bank believed in us. They believed in us, they believed in the project. They came down, they took a look at what we needed, and they said, you know what, we can help get you the rest of the way. As a result of Ion Bank's financial help, we've been able to help others move on in a field that's difficult to get experience in. It's very important when you're a business that works in the community and for the community that you're working with partners who understand who you are. And Ion Bank does that. They walk with us every day. Community is important, and Ion gets community, and they get Nutmeg TV. It's community banking at its best.
Nick Augustino right here at the East Side Restaurant. We always have the complete full dinner menu. Knockwurst, bratwurst, sauerbraten, potato pancakes, red cabbage, rice pudding, cream pies, all the desserts that Germany had to offer. I always do something different. Yes, I do. I brought seafood to the beer garden at the East Side Restaurant. East Side Restaurant, your German destination restaurant in Connecticut. Tiki-taka, hoy, hoy, hoy!